On the panel today, we have Troy Kemp, the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Partnerships from the Ron Clark Academy, Monaleto C. Irby, the Deputy Director from the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice, Phillip Scott Lee, Chaplain from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, Tamu Lewis, the Founder and Board President of the Lee Thompson Young Foundation, Tyrone Dennis, the founder of Clippers and Cops, Lindsey Oliver, the School Social Work Specialist from the Georgia Department of Education, Keri Hill, the Moderator, the Senior Director from the Georgia Campaign of Adolescent Power and Potential. Now, the statewide network itself is executing a 3-year innovation and impact strategy to develop, test, and disseminate effective parenting and caregiver interventions and innovations structured as curricula and parenting strategies and a toolkit that will help reduce teen pregnancy, STIs, and related health risks in the state of Georgia. The Health Promotion Resource Center selected the caregiver priority for this grant. Now, what we did within this grant is realize that parenting is not just mom and dad, it is also caregivers, which can be aunts, uncles, older siblings, youth pastors, and youth coaches. And as we know, throughout the state of Georgia, youth and parents are being affected by youth violence, mental health, wellness, resilience, and need assistance with risk reduction, prevention, education. And this panel today consists of experts and persons who help support the communities in Georgia. So now I will leave it to our moderator, Dr. Keri Hill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And thank you all for joining us. I am Keri Hill, the moderator for this discussion. And with me, I have change agents, servant leaders, advocates, and I'm so excited about this discussion. But I actually want to start off by hearing from you. So those of us online, those of us in the room, and our panelists, I'd like for all of us to get our phones out. I want you to put them up later, though. I don't want you to be texting while we're up here, but let's get our phones out. A QR code is about to appear on the screen. So you can either use the QR code or go to menti.com and insert the code listed. And the question that should come up is, what lifestyle and social trends were popular when you were a teen? So let's think back. Probably wasn't that long ago, right? Let's think back. What lifestyle and social trends were popular when you were a teen? All right, I see a few of them coming up, so means it's working. All right, and we'll go to the screen so we can see the answers coming up. All right, baggy jeans, disco and partying, smoking weed. All right, clicks, dial-up internet. Do you all remember dial-up internet? Western sports, turtleneck shirts and scrunchies. Yep, and they're back. We were discussing that earlier, Lindsey. Gang violence and drugs. I grew up through the, it's so hard to read that from here, and my glasses are on. Dancing, Jerry curls, whipping your children. roller skating, baggy pants, house parties, dance team. This person was on the majorette. Okay. Grunge, boy bands, going to the mall. We had community centers to attend after school. Don't talk about the real issues. All right, and then my panelists who are a little closer and who may have better eyes than I do, you feel free to speak up if you see something I didn't call out. Pagers, yes. What was the code where you wanted to say hello? And it was like 43770. All right, so let's go to the next question. And the next question is, what trends are popular now? What trends are popular now? What's it now? I think you should see something that says next question on yours. I'm hoping you do. Okay. All right, I see TikTok, 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 video games, Snapchat, social media, gangs, crazy rap, Instagram, sex, social media, rap music, drugs. What'd you say? Oh, tight pants for males. Crop top. Gender designations. All right. Bling. The VVS's and all that. Cell phone, guns, pants on the ground. So we had baggy pants then, but they had pants on the ground. Okay, so Instagram, I think I saw Instagram. Braids. Okay, so vaping. All right, we're gonna do our last question. And I wanna know what are some, because I see a lot of Instagram, TikTok. I saw a lot of that on there. So I wanna go to that first. And the next question is, what are some of the negative outcomes, or what are some of the concerns of media, internet, and social media? So let's ask this last question. What are some of the negative outcomes or concerns with internet and social media and the media? Disinformation, depression, stress, no goals, isolation, bullying, sex, hate speech, suicide, depression, mental health, poor self-esteem, mental health, anxiety, hate, drug overdose, child exploitation and trafficking. Everybody wants likes, disrespect and anger, narcissism, feeling inadequate, anxiety. Rather record than help, I believe is what I see. And then body, unrealistic body. Thank you so much. Suicide, murder, body dysmorphia, suicide, active shooters. Okay, so we see really different, right? From when we were growing up and what we're saying are the trends now. And so our young people have access to so much information constantly at a time where their brains are still developing. I'd like to know from the panelists, let's talk about this last question. What are some of the negative outcomes of media, internet, and social media? Let's talk about the impact of these things. What are you seeing, and what would you like for our audience to know regarding media, social media, internet, all of that, as far as the impact on our young people?
Well, I'm a retired gang detective, and it doesn't matter where you live, gang violence affects everybody. A lot of people think that in Atlanta, you can move outside of 285 and that's not a problem. And that's not true because of social media. Now you can log in, you can live in a gated community or a trailer park and log in and pick up gang trends and see how they're doing it on Bankhead Highway or wherever a gang is. And I think that all comes from social media. A lot of kids don't even realize that there's no such thing as a fake gang member. If you act like a duck, walk like a duck, it's a duck. And unfortunately, some people will hold you accountable for what you post and what you put out there.
Thank you,
So
Tyrone.
I put up there the unrealistic lifestyle.
Right.
It gives, think about this. We have aunties, grandmas, great grandmas who are on social media as well, all the time. So imagine a child in the same home. I think we talked the other day when I say parents make TikTok videos with their kids. So it's really popular now. However, in the work that I do, particularly when I was a probation officer, a lot of times we found our kids through social media. And those times were disheartening because when we didn't know they were a part of gangs, the pictures show that they were part of gangs holding weapons and things of that nature. So this unrealistic lifestyle for them, they have to get it by any means necessary. And they'll do those things just to have the lifestyle based on what they're seeing on social media. Social media is a good thing if you use it for good. However, as you stated, those youth who want this grandiose kind of lifestyle, so to speak, they see those things and that's what they want. That's what they emulate. That's how they dress. That's how they talk. That's how they walk. And the violence is matching the same way based on social media.
Thank you, Monaleto.
I see from the educator side, well, all sides, but you have kids that are basically impaired because of their overstimulated brains.
Right.
They're tired. You look at kids going to sleep. You know, back in the day, my brother was joking with me. He said, "You remember back in the day, we were raised by Uncle TV, right? You had that TV in that room. But now these kids are swiping and they're actively engaging with these screens." And I was telling some parents the other day, I said, you might as well have your child play basketball full court before they go to bed, because they're going to bed with these devices next to them. The last thing they're seeing is something that's unrealistic. The last thing they're doing is overstimulating their brain, and they have to go to school the next day. They have to learn. And so they're impairing themselves. And if you don't, you suffer from a lack of sleep for several days in a row, you might as well be taking shots, of alcohol before you go to bed. And so you have kids that are walking in. The equation, can be equated as having a can of Coke being shaken and just put it on the table. Now the teacher's supposed to open, pop the top. Now it's gonna get real for you.
Right.
So they're just the effects of them being so addicted to this feed is really challenging.
Another negative effect is the increase in mental health concerns with students, especially adolescents at an earlier age are experiencing anxiety, depression, suicidality. As first responders in schools, school social workers often respond to crisis situations and safety situations. And because of social media, students are aware of those circumstances. We were just discussing, sometimes there's a contagion effect with suicidality and mental health concerns. So with social media, it's just expediting students' access to sometimes negative material.
And I'll say as well, looking from the hospital perspective, is you have all these influences who are doing the challenges. And so what's happening is these young people are doing challenges, not understanding their consequences. And so when those consequences happen, you have these young people who wind up in our hospitals, whether it be our EDs or ICUs, whatever it might be. And then you have these parents who had no clue, unless sometimes they are filming with, there is that as well, who had no clue that this is going on. There's such a disconnect between, and hear me say, I use this word, I understand there's different levels of this, but a lack of investment in parents in their children. And so what's happening is, for that reason, children are using these influences as their parents.
Yep.
And so they're doing these things because the parent said so. And, you'll get all these likes or you get all of this here. And so, yeah, there's a disconnect there.
I think sort of to build on that, one thing that I've lived through with my oldest daughter from the influence of the internet and the social media was just a lack of healthy relationships and how to form healthy relationships, which then fed into her isolation and depression.
Thank you. All right, thank you all very much. I just want to read a tip from the GCAP, Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Power and Potential Parent Toolkit. It's a free online resource. By talking to your teen about safety on the internet, your relationship with them strengthens. Set ground rules. You talked about limiting the time or not necessarily having to be the last thing they see before going to bed, and become friends with them on their social platforms. Monaleto, that's something that you talked about because you said that your niece unfriended you or defriended. I don't know what's the right word, but she
8 years old, and I'm just perusing, 8 years old. I'm perusing Instagram and I see this picture that was not pleasing to my sight. And I called my sister her mom, and she's in the house with her mom and dad, but I'm that uncle. I'm your mom's older brother. So, and I didn't like it. And it was literally just with her tongue hanging out of her mouth. She's 8. I know this is something that she's seen before, that she's doing. And I told my sister, you need to watch that. Next thing I knew, Riley had deleted me from social media. So I called my sister and said, you tell Riley she needs to add me back or you remove her from social media altogether. No, I'm not her daddy, but I'm your big brother and I'm her uncle. And so, but it scared me because it's starting at 8 years old.
Thank you. And I do want, while we're talking about media, to acknowledge that less than 24 hours ago, an Atlanta rapper was killed, was fatally shot, a rapper from the Migos.
Yes.
So we are seeing our rappers are dying, right? We are seeing also that they are being incarcerated in Atlanta. And I know that's something that you and I spoke about a little bit, Monaleto. Is there anything that you all want to say about that before I move to the next topic regarding, because you mentioned emulating what they see. So just wanted to ask, is there anything you want to
Can I say this
add?
before? Go ahead. Because I know you're about to preach. He's about to go ahead. I feel it. But the outpouring that I've seen on social media concerning that death, and I am not, I feel for that. But he was shot playing dice.
He wasn't even playing. He was
But
watching.
it was a dice game.
Yeah.
Let's go there. But the outpouring of grief that I'm seeing from our young men who had him at a high level in their life, it shows who they see as their hero as opposed to who we saw as our hero. It's overwhelming. Sad is one thing, but how can this happen? I can't believe this. They need to find this person. This person needs to, so they're looking, we want to seek revenge for a person that they probably never met before, but because who they see and listen to their music and their lyrics and things of that nature. So yeah, that's what I want to say. You can preach now.
For me, working gangs, a lot of our gang investigations involve some of the most famous rappers that you can think of. The Young Thug case, I was front and center on all of that. And it's unfortunate because so many young people idolize and look up to everything that they do.
Absolutely.
The one thing that young people and some people don't understand is, even as a police officer, I listen to rap music as well. I didn't listen to a song and say, I think I want to build a case on it. And trying to get people to understand that is difficult. As a police officer, we're not attacking the culture. We're attacking people that are breaking the law, that are pushing crime. And through their music, some of them are promoting violence, gang violence. And for me, I understand, I speak that language. And I love talking to kids about rap music and helping them decipher the songs for themselves, read the lyrics, don't just sing the lyrics. If I made a song about Mary Had a Little Lamb with a beat, we might dance to it. And some of these rap music that we listen to, when you listen to what they're saying, they are warping the minds of our young people. With the incident that happened last night, the unfortunate part about it is the trauma that's constantly being shared. People are quick to share the crime scene pictures, and that's trauma. That's sharing trauma. And for some people, it's disgusting. But everybody is so quick. I want likes. I want to be the first one to share. I posted a video about someone basically kidnapping a kid as a skit, and people were in their phones where they just kept going. They didn't even intervene. And I think a lot of our young people are so used to just social media and what they see that they're not actively in the world. And some think that gang violence is not real. They think it's a game, or they think it's play. And if you ever meet a real gang member, this is life or death for some people. And some people are willing to die for what they stand for. And getting a young person to understand that is a task, because they might not live in that environment, but they feel like, oh, I'm gonna mimic that environment, and that's a problem.
Thank you so much. So while we're talking about safety, I want to move to a question about safety in our schools. Tyrone, Troy, Lindsey, how do we create a safe and welcoming environment in our schools?
So one of the things that I'm fortunate, because of work at the Ron Clark Academy, that's A1. That's the number one thing. You know, people always talk about curriculum, but I always tell people curriculum's like paint. It's not going to stick unless you get to the surface and make sure you understand what the surface is about. And for kids, they have to be comfortable somewhere before they're comfortable everywhere. And so when they walk in schools, the question is, sometimes they go to schools where the teachers don't look anything like them. But this responsibility for the teachers, just like understanding how people learn differently, is to learn how people live differently, right? Know kids by their name and their needs. So, you know, how active are people to really understand how to pronounce folks' names correctly? That's an assignment for us, right? It's not a one-off. It's not, you have a great teacher that knows everybody's name, know every person in the institution. That's part of the culture, the accountability. So to make schools safe for young people, there has to be accountability on what are the essential things that the kids have to have. They need to make sure that the walls and the rooms and you engage all the senses, the sights, the sense, the smells, the sounds, reflect the people that are walking in the building, right? You come in somebody's house, the walls don't have nothing on it. It's got pictures of people who live there. So when you look at schools, how does that reflect the homes that these kids, because sometimes that's the safest place they are. So for us, it's really about, in general in education, is to be intentional about how to educate the educators about the people they serve.
Thank you.
Great job.
I know it's.
I think I could also contribute to that conversation by saying that we have to acknowledge when students are doing good things. So positive behavior really needs to be rewarded, and acknowledging when students do that is really important to the well-being of the student while they're in the building. Not to negate anything that you said, because absolutely that's super important too. We're just piggybacking off of each other. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the student services professionals that are in school buildings. So you have school counselors, school social workers, school psychologists, school crisis interventionists, school safety officers, school mental health professionals that are the de facto mental health provider of students and children, especially in rural Georgia. And that is a great way to keep kids safe. So if there's one thing I could tell a parent, would be to reach out to your school counselor if you have a concern about your student, because she or he or they can help you access that system of care to get your student the care that they need.
Thank you.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Because this is all about actionable items, right? You can talk about a whole bunch of things in theory, but actionable. I work with a lot of administrators around the country, and when I said, what did you do to transform your school? He said, I made it safe. And one of the things to make it safe, it's incumbent upon the people in leadership of the schools to get to know the people who shape the lives of the students outside the building. You don't know who all the youth coaches are, have their numbers right here too, if they're willing to volunteer. Ask the parents, who else is influenced? Who's the most influential person in your child's life other than you? I need to know who that is too. That kind of thing. It changes things dramatically, because when that kid knows that you're in a connected community of caring adults, then we got you. We have you, not just the people in front of you.
For me, I'm currently the director of school safety for my old school district. I live in St. Louis. I basically, like I told you, I occupy the same seat that I was expelled from. And it's, so my life came full circle. But recently in St. Louis this past week, we just had an active shooter. And explaining to parents that school safety is not just physical safety, it's social and emotional safety, and finding out, how does someone feel? How does your child feel? What are they going through? Like you said, there's a number of programs throughout our school district for any problem that a child has. We have a program for it. But if we're not communicating with the parent, with the child, how do we know how to help you? It's like I tell them, I'm Jerry Maguire. Help me help you. Conversation helps figure out what's wrong with somebody. I read a quote before about if I had a pencil. My coach, myself, growing up, I was a voluntary desegregation student. So I got bused from the inner city to a suburban school. And my coach and I butted heads because he didn't get to know me. He felt like I grew up in the same environment where I went to school, and he didn't understand a lot about me. And as I became an adult and was able to communicate that with him, we had a better bond. And the person that actually got me expelled, we actually went to lunch a month ago. And I explained to him, he didn't understand my dialect. That's why diversity matters. For me to get expelled, I said, I will steal you. Some of y'all might not know what that means, but for me, that means punch. He said, I'll kill you. And that got me a 43-day suspension. And then explaining to him, though, thank you. And he was like, why are you thanking me? I said, because the storm you created cleared a path for my future. I wouldn't be where I'm at now, so thank you. So I took him to lunch. So
I like what, one more time, name, sir.
Troy.
Troy. It seems as if Ron Clark is creating a culture that is healthy, where students feel safe. And I'm big on the culture of a school, a business, a home, anything. You can walk into a school and from the entrance, the secretary can make you feel welcome. And I've seen the exact opposite, where I walk in a school and the secretary is looking at me as if I'm not supposed to be there, instead of asking, may I help you? Imagine how that a student, a child can feel with that. I talked about this just yesterday in a class, and maybe with you. These 2022 teachers, and I'm not knocking teachers, okay? Social media again, they'll put out there, I can't wait till fall break. I can't wait till summer. Oh, I have one more week before school starts. As if it's a burden for them in the job that they chose. So if they don't want to go back or don't want to be there, imagine how they are treating those children. Any little thing that a kid does, I mean, being a child is punishable to them because they're frustrated, they're mad. I had teachers who wore dresses every day, right? We knew they were hell-bent on us making sure that we were going to be respectful, and we did the work, and they treated us as such. That they were an extension, here it is, thank you. They were an extension from our home, right? Now the extension from our home stops at our door, the student's door, because when they come there, we have teachers who look down on our kids. So when we're talking about how does it feel safe, you have to create a culture, and that comes from administration. The administrator has to set that tone for school. I read something, trust starts with truth and ends with truth. The truth is, some teachers should not be in the classroom, particularly for kids who have issues, whose parents have issues, whose grandparents have issues, who come to the school looking for some respite of sorts.
So I want to share an example of the school administrator stepping up in the case for my oldest daughter, who had a bout where she was really suffering with, she described it as social anxiety in high school. And at this particular instance, when she got to school, she felt like people were crowding around her, that there was something wrong with her, and this wasn't actually happening, but this is what she felt. So instead of the principal calling me and saying, come get her, she can't stay here, what they did was ask her what would be helpful. Did she want to go home or did she want to stay? She would like to stay, she said, but she can't be where everyone else is. So the principal said, I have this, space like right outside of my office. It's a separate room. Would it be okay if you worked in there? And she said, yes. And she said, you know what? I'll let all your teachers know. They'll bring you the assignments. That way you don't get behind. And my daughter felt safe and she stayed at school. So just a
The
practical
administrator
example. The administrator.
creating the culture for safety.
Right.
But can you add this piece? That even the people at the administrative level have to feel safe to make the moves they need to make to care for the kids.
Right.
Because, big ships turn slowly. And so when you look at the schools that are able to do that, one, they may have had an administrator that's been there where they have enough trust from the leadership that they can make the moves they need to make. Or this is why a lot of schools end up, this is why Ron Clark formed the Ron Clark Academy, because he got tired of fighting against, the school saying you can't do that. And he saw what was happening for the kids in the room. And he said, I got to do what's necessary. So I created a school where we can replicate it and then try to scale it. And one of the things I can tell you is when you think about professional development for educators, there's a recipe out there, but sometimes the people don't eat what you serve there. Right? So you're making these tacos and people don't eat meat over here, right? Wow. So it's really about trying to look at when we talk about social emotional, how do you engage and create an environment where people want to be? You will do your best work where you want to be. And that's not necessarily baked into the recipe of what they've been doing for preparing educators. So now you got to do some things on the back end, but that's okay because there are some organizations that are there. That's why I came to the school personally, because we're serving kids we'll never see, but we're able to influence that community.
Love it. Love that.
Thank you. So,
That's how I roll. That's what's gonna happen,
so while we're talking about the challenges of someone who works with youth, I do want us to spend a little bit of time on that, a little bit more time. So we do have our own trauma, right? So we have either our trauma from childhood that may not have been anything that we dealt with, or current trauma, aging parents, divorcing, whatever the deal is. And we do bring that as well. And I want to hear from you first, Scott, on what have you been experiencing? So have you seen burnout or staff shortages? And what advice do you give to parents and youth serving professionals about how to handle our own stress?
Yes. A big yes to all of that. First off, I'll speak to my own self. I have mental health issues. I battle depression and anxiety. I'm on medication for that, and I also talk to someone. And I say that openly because there was a time in my life I did not, because I was very ashamed of it. And I thought, if I speak to that, people will think I can't help them. So I've come to a place in my life where I will speak openly to it, and I tell, oh, thank you. Thank you. But I also, in my role at the hospital, I have a chance to meet with all of our new employees prior to them joining us. And I tell them, I say, reaching out for help, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of great strength, because you realize you are of great value and you want to make sure you are well to be your very best. And I tell them, if anybody from our highest person to whomever it is ever says anything different, to send them to me, because I will not drink Dr. Pepper and I can be a bear. Dr. Pepper is my drink. I'm not a coffee drinker. I love it. So yes, but what we're seeing within the hospitals, but I will say any industry that serves others, burnout, people walking away, you name it, we're seeing it. And there's a lot of people who will say, well, it's because of this reason and this reason, to which again, I say, yes, it's not one reason. There's several things playing into that for different people, but we like to sometimes pinpoint one thing and say, oh, this must be it, without really getting to the core of what's going on. Where that starts with is listening. We do not listen well. We listen to respond because we want to be right and make sure we lead the conversation the way we want it to go. If we want change to happen, if we want people to move from simply surviving to thriving again, we have to be willing to put our own agendas aside and listen to what is actually being said, not only verbally, but also through other means. Again, we've been taught to be quick response. We want everything instantaneous. I talk about McDonald's, and it's a joke on the side, but I won't tell that. McDonald's, you want it quick, you want it instant, you go through the drive-through, you get it going, and you're on your way because you don't have time to stop and sit and eat. And so that's the way we want stuff now. We don't want anything quick. One of the programs that we offer at our hospital is a workshop called I'm Fine. And FINE is an acronym for feelings inside not expressed. Because what it means is if I were to come to every one of you and say, how are you doing? What you'll typically say is, oh, I'm fine, whether you are or not, because you think either somebody doesn't care and they're just making chit chat, or if I tell you I'm not fine, then that's going to cause me to break down. And so I want to give a space, and I give a space to our team to say, hey, how are you doing? And when somebody says I'm fine or I'm not, you can see in their facial expressions if they are or if they're not. You know to follow up or not follow up. And what I found is those individuals that we are willing to take time to listen to hear, to allow someone to sit and be, and to encourage the idea of self-care, those people are staying because they have this calling and this passion to stay. One of the other things I do around this idea of burnout and thing is to say, remember your calling. When did this all start for you? What was that time like? Because if I were to ask them, when was the last time they thought about their calling? 10, 15, 20 years ago, they don't think about it. But if you can bring that calling back into the here and now, then they start rekindling a little bit of that passion. They start thinking, you know, I'm supposed to be here, or maybe I'm supposed to do something different. But that resilience starts building because each one of us has resilience, whether we recognize it or not. The question is, has it developed as we've developed? When I talk to my staff again, sorry, I'm going long, but this is really fun. When I talk to my staff again, I said, when you were much younger and you fell and scraped your knee, what happened? Usually a parental figure came into your life, they wiped it off for you, put a little bandage on it. For me, I'm so old, we had that white bottle with the green top that's supposed to take the sting out of it, Beta-10 or whatever it's called, I forget. And then somebody either gave you a lollipop or an icy or something like that. I said, today, if you were to fall down, that may or may not work, and probably not. But what would happen is hopefully your resilience has grown so that you can get what you need to make yourself well again, or seek out those individuals who are doing that. And so this idea of burnout and stuff is very real. It's very much happening, but there are ways that we can be proactive that when these times happen, they may knock us down, but we're able to get back up and keep going. So maybe that's a long answer.
No, thank you for that.
Yeah. And I'll tell you real quick about the McDonald's thing. I was talking here. I had a junior college scholarship to play baseball, and this little country town that had a Hardee's, but it had no McDonald's. And I grew up in North Georgia, and I always stopped at McDonald's for breakfast going in the morning and dinner coming home. And so when I went to visit this school, they had no McDonald's, so I told them no. 18-year-old, what was more important to me? Yeah. McDonald's. So thank you again.
I hear Scott saying kids who fall down, scrape their knee, and they had someone to spray the whatever that was on there, give them a lollipop or icy. Imagine those kids that didn't have that person or people to do that, who have grown up and maybe sitting in this room right now and working to make sure. I think we do a lot of work, some of us. My mom wouldn't mind if I tell this. I'll be 48 next week, November 11th. Mom just turned 62, September. Don't talk about my mama. And I am not the oldest. Oh, wow. And there are 7 of us. At 47 now, I'm the patriarch of my family, mother's side. So imagine the stressors there. Everybody's back in Alabama. I'm here in Georgia. Things happen and they call me, and all those things and other things that happen. So when I hear you say the burnout, because we are, people like me work hard to not fail. We work hard to not fail, and we don't give ourselves time. I always hear, you're always going. And I put in my head, to whom much is given, much is required. But someone told me, but you have to take care of you, or you will burn out. So those people who don't have the wherewithal to take care of themselves and feel like they always have to go, and don't have the opportunity to take a break, they will burn out. And depending on what field of study you're in, your career choice, you will burn out. My thing is, I think I can help everyone I come in contact with. I run myself crazy in that thought. But just imagine those people who can't process that, and still try to go and still try to make mom happy, dad happy, grandma happy, sisters happy, brothers happy, nephew, nieces, because they're looking at you. So there's this thought of failure. So I'm speaking to y'all as I speak to myself, right? There's this thing, you don't want to fail because you don't want to disappoint your family. So you give your all and then some. And when it's time to sleep. So the best thing for me was to learn the word no. I can't do it today. And if we learn that, and it took me a while, but I've gotten there. I can't take everything. And I think we have people in here, I think this group here, we have this thing that we have to put our best foot forward we have to be spot on every day. We have to be suited and booted every day. We have to be ready at every moment. And that can be stressful and cause those mental health issues. That's just my 2 cents to that.
Thank you. So a lot of talk about self-care and a lot of talk about this knee, right? Having somebody to spray the knee, make the knee feel better. But sometimes there's not that patience to do that. And we may do something like medicate. We may do something like say that looks like ADHD, so let's go ahead and prescribe. So I want to talk about that. Do we feel like there is an overdiagnosis of ADHD that really could be the main root of trauma or stress presenting itself?
Money is attached to ADHD now.
Okay.
For parents, money is attached to ADHD. It hurts my heart when a kid say, or when they acted out, or I've gone to a school when I was going into the schools, I need my medicine. I didn't take my medicine. I needed my medicine for this moment. So if you can tell me that, it's almost like you've been programmed in that way. And I've seen parents who come and want us to give them documents so that they can take it to a social service agency because they'll get a check. Let's just say what it is. That's the word they use. Got to get a check. So these diagnoses, now there are some kids absolutely need, but there are some kids that I've come in contact with that the dollar sign is attached to that diagnosis.
I would say that, well, first of all, I spent a majority of my career working with boys, reaching and teaching boys. And boys are disproportionately medicated. And what I learned is that the onus, there are kids who need the medication, but things, diet, you're talking about kids that are being overstimulated from birth. I mean, the average attention span is just insane right now. And wiggling doesn't mean you don't want to learn. The question is, how do you get ahead of it? For example, proximity motivates students. When they're very young, the teachers walk around the room because they want to make sure they're not setting the place on fire. When they get a little bit older, the teacher just sits down and teaches from the front of the room and they're wiggling in the back of the room. And the easiest answer is go to the door.
Right.
And so that's playing defense instead of playing offense.
Good.
And so when we talk about medication, I've seen a lot of kids with medication that you take this medication to sit still. Now you got to take this other one to move again. Wow. So all of a sudden, this kid doesn't even feel like themselves. They don't feel like they're able to mature because the medicine is slowing them down in some ways. They don't feel like themselves and they act out in the strangest ways. And so, it's one of those things where it's kind of like when you think of medicine 100 years ago, people were dead. They were pronouncing people dead 100 years ago for this. They're alive and walking right now. In today's medicine, the same thing is true when it comes to medication. There are things that we're doing to kids that when you look back, you're going, man, we medicate this kid for that. But once the person understands there's other ways to engage, your engagement is everything. Maybe you just flat out boring, right? And that's the fact. So are there things that you can do first before you put your kid on a medication that's gonna change things in their life that they may not be able to undo.
Parents need to understand psychotropics as well. You just can't give kids medicine to go to school. You don't give it to them on the weekend and then you give it back to them on Monday. I mean, that's messing the child up. Body-wise, the medicine is leaving the system. There's no consistency. You go to grandma's house, you don't need to take your medicine, right? You go visit this person, you don't need to take your medicine. So we'll give you your medicine for school. And I just think they need to be more educated on that, particularly for these younger kids, elementaries. And the age is going down lower and lower where kids are being medicated. Lower and lower. Because some behaviors are just normal children's behavior. They're being a child. So yeah, we can go on all day for that one.
I'll say two things. One, kind of speaking to what you're talking about there, talking about the over medication, and especially talking about boys. There are a lot of times our females, and I noticed with our daughter, my oldest daughter has ADHD and anxiety and stuff like that. And she was not diagnosed until later on with ADHD because they assumed she didn't have the traditional symptoms because she wasn't acting out. She wasn't doing this stuff here. But we found though that girls act differently with ADHD than boys do. So that needs to be recognized because sometimes we push aside, oh, she'll be okay. Oh, she'll grow out of stuff like that. Maybe, maybe not. So just recognizing that. I forget what the other thing was I was going to say. Sorry, I get so caught up in my head sometimes. There's so many things going on. Thank you. Yeah, it'll come back here. Yeah, I'll come back. I'll say that was the main thing. The second thing will come back. You have to forgive me. I sometimes it's part of who I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You were into it. That was good. And maybe after Tamu goes, maybe you'll
Yes.
remember after.
So something that I would share is my oldest daughter has ADHD as well. And as a parent, my husband and I didn't want that to be the case. So we did get, second opinions. We tried natural approaches. We changed diet. We did all these things. Meanwhile, she continued to struggle. And so we had to get over ourselves and do what was best for her. She did need a medication, and it was a relief to her almost. She was able to then focus and communicate and do things with her class that she wasn't able to. And we also tried like alternative learning environments and all of that, right, to avoid medication, but sometimes it is needed.
I think it's just, again, what we're talking about here, it's the means and opportunities that some families have these opportunities and some do not. And it's recognizing and saying, how can we, as those within communities who may have access to these means, tap in for these families? But it takes us, again, being willing to invest in them and understanding investment is not short-term. Sometimes we want, again, McDonald's, we want that short-term investment, short-term turnover, short-term profit. And sometimes we got to realize it takes longer to do that. And so to have these things we're talking about here, it takes time, and it takes us being willing to say, hey, I'm going to do more than 1 year. I'm going to do more than 5 years. I'm really going to invest to make this change that needs to happen. Again, going back to your thing, calling us all change agents, but we do what we do because we're passionate about it. We're called in, and we're invested long-term in the outcome of this because we believe in our youth, not only today, but our youth to come.
Thank you. And believe it or not, we are kind of out of time. I do want us to see if there's a closing word or message that we have. We spoke a lot about mental health, a lot about safety, and just thinking about what can we do as parents, as those who work with youth, what can we do to help them feel more safe, more healthy? And how can we have conversations with them that acknowledges their fears and their stress, but also leaves them with some hope? What can we do?
I have a good strategy. I've explained this one to my husband a couple of times, and he always looks at me when he tries it, and I'm like, yeah, you're doing it good. And all you have to do is, first of all, start the conversation. So maybe it's this really ugly thing you don't want to talk about: sex, drugs, alcohol. You didn't turn your test in last Friday. And then you give an opportunity for your person to respond. And then here's the trick: repeat what they say back to them. Okay? Anybody want to practice with me? You got it? How was school today?
It was okay. My teacher hates me.
Your teacher hates you? Your teacher hates you?
Yeah, I just wonder why I always get my papers last. They always drop them on the ground. I got to pick them up myself. I don't understand what's going on.
You're last with your papers and you have to pick them up?
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes people just say they're doing that on purpose, but it may not be true.
You're doing that on purpose?
Well, guess what? I wish my teacher listened to me the way you listen to me right now.
So all I was doing was just repeating what my student said to me. And that's so affirming to the person that's talking to you. And it's an easy technique that any parent can do. If my husband can do it, he's married to a social worker, bless his heart. Anybody can do it. Okay, so practice at home.
I love what you said there. There's sometimes parenting, we talk about educators and caregivers being overwhelmed. These parents are overwhelmed. And honestly, you know, I look at it like this. One thing you cannot do is play tennis by yourself. Somebody's got to hit that ball back, right? And in a household full of kids, the ball never gets hit back for some of them. The only person hits the ball back, this kid is serving. They want to be seen.
Right.
You know, in my name growing up, it was you're seen and not heard, because I'm trying to make moves over here to make sure y'all have something to eat tonight. And so, you know, you can internalize that as nobody wants to see you, but I'm like, my mama loves me. I know that, but I know her like that. But other people, the reason why I'm here today is because I had people who hit the ball back for me. I had people in line ready to hit the ball back. And so what parents could empower themselves to make sure that they get to know and create a connected community of adults that they know, that they trust, that can hit the ball back for their child when they can't hit it themselves. And that's why I played sports. So I had an automatic group there, but I had educators too. And I think it's incumbent of us to share this, just like social media can share the wrong thing, we can share the right thing. That's true. And it's to create that connected community of adults that's walking around with tennis rackets, ready to hit the ball back.
We've lost a village.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
We've definitely lost a village. How dare you say something to anyone's child these days? And we have to get back to the point where we can't be afraid to tell someone when they're doing wrong, particularly a child. And parents have to be receptive to that, particularly if you're coming from a good place. But they'll fight against it. I used an example yesterday of parents taking a kid to school to address a teacher. The kid's right there as the parent's disrespecting the teacher, right? The parent goes home. The first time that teacher tries to redirect that student, the parent just disrespected the teacher. So what is that child going to do? There was times my grandmother could leave, and we knew if we did anything, as soon as they got back, they were going to know what we did. And she would give the neighbors permission to discipline us. I don't even think she had to give them permission. It was just known fact. But our village is disintegrating before our eyes. And we are only allowing those in our village or our circle who we know or think we trust. And those same people in our village and in those circles have the same mentality that we have. So it's not helping the kid. So parents have to be open. And then you have these parents, and I'll be quiet, that have so many social services that are in their home already. They don't want another person in there. We don't want to talk to another person. But we have to. Sometimes I go home, I have to tell my mom, you can't say that to those kids, because she still has that. She'll still do it, right? And I don't want anybody to hurt my mom, right? Because another Irby comes. But that's how she grew up. That's how she raised us. Even as a young mother, she didn't play the radio, right? But our village is disintegrating before our eyes. Actually, the village now is social media.
I think because we've gotten to the selfie age, it's all about me, and what I have going on. And I think that's the biggest drawback, piggybacking off what you just said. If the village is disintegrated and we're allowing social media and all these other factors to raise our children, how we're expecting a different result, they're basically mimicking what they're seeing in society. I work in schools now. And one of the principals was like, how do you interact with all the kids like that? I said, because I talk to them. When I pick up my own kids, I talk to them. I have that conversation. And unfiltered, where it's like, you could say, my daughter, she's 15, she might say something like, Daddy, can I curse? And I'm like, well, I don't want you to curse, but if that's what it's gonna take to get the story out, don't tell mommy. But that makes her feel comfortable in talking. I'd rather my daughter talk and any kid talk to me, because some of these kids don't have anybody to talk to. They're going off the influences of navigating through life, trying to figure it out, off all this stuff we posted, when they really don't know. They really don't have a person to sit down, older sibling or older someone, to explain. When we do Clippers and Cops, I'll talk about it tomorrow, our campus invasion, one of the kids wrote, and he said, I appreciate that you talk to us and not at us. And the fact that you're able to share. Some adults don't share that we've fallen and gotten back up. Some adults keep their like, I would never. And the kids need to see our failures to understand that it's okay to fall, but get back up. Dust yourself off, spray the little thing he was talking about on the knee, and keep going. And once you are able to help them understand that after every storm, the sun comes out, let the weight go. Some kids, some people carry stuff that only you're thinking about it, and people have moved on from it. Help the kids understand to let go and move on with their life.
Thank you. And I do want to say, for the sake of time, I do want to take 1 to 2 audience questions, but Scott and Tamu, do you want to say something before we take the questions?
I would just say one of the words that I've been kind of using as a theme is patience, especially regarding mental health, because it is a journey. So if there's a situation, a challenge that you're dealing with your child, or a child that you know that you're trying to work with, you can expect some trial and error. You might not get it right the first time, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to work, because I think anything can be managed. It's just a matter of finding what resonates with the child that you're working with, and having that patience, and then also knowing that it might change. So something that works today might not work 2 months from now. You might have to shift. So just have patience.
And I would say, just practice understanding that each person you come into contact with has potential, and see that potential. It might not be somebody you would ever envision or have envisioned before, but as you walk from this place, every person you come into contact with, no matter if it's somebody you know, somebody you don't know, somebody you see wandering the streets, somebody, whatever it might be, believe that that person has potential, because sometimes your belief in them can help to open their belief. And sometimes your belief in them can help to open the belief of those around them who have also lost belief in them. And I think that can change the world.
Are there any
Thank
audience
you.
questions? The mic is over here. If there are no audience questions, I have a question from the chat from Felicia Howard. What's the best way to approach a teacher that makes their student feel unsafe?
Dialogue and communication. Try to voice your concerns or what is being disclosed to you from your child, and try to basically have that conversation without making the teacher, where it's almost like you're siding with the child over the teacher, because then, like you just said, then that child may see that behavior and say, oh yeah, I could disrespect that teacher too. Communicate as an adult with that teacher and explain to them your child. You know your child better than anybody, and try to keep the door of communication open to communicate with that teacher. That teacher is with that child majority of the day. And like I said, you know your child. So sometimes you have parents that they ready to drop their kids off at school to get away from their own kids. So in knowing that, know that that teacher is dealing with that same child, and just try to communicate with them.
There's also, there's sort of 2 things. One, anytime you can use questions versus just statements, is always going to be helpful. I've seen a situation where the child told the parent that the teacher made them feel unsafe, and it was a perception, right? There's perception and there's reality, and basically it was another word of another child that made the child think that the teacher felt a certain way. So it was really going in, trying to really understand, why do you think my child feels this way? 2, these are things that my child has shared. Can you help me better understand that, right? That kind of thing. So, you got to get shoulder to shoulder with people instead of face to face when you're dealing with conflict. And that usually changes the strategy anyway, because if I'm standing face to face, toe to toe with a teacher, I'm already, you might as well put your gloves on right now. So pivoting a little bit, even in the posture, when you're having that same conversation is always helpful.
Don't pour gasoline on the fire. The whole thing is to try to minimize that. Again, there are two sides to every story. And Mr. Clipper and Cobb said, you know your child. And I've had some teachers, my mom had to come. I've heard teachers talk about my mom and our family. I've heard, not what someone I heard. I've heard teachers say to another teacher about my mom, those type people like that. My mom overheard, and it didn't go as well. Right. She came face to face because you're not going to do my children, and you're not going to talk about me in front of my children, you know. So teachers have to understand, again, we have adults with baggage. Some of them may be teachers. And we have to understand that communication effectively, because it's one thing to communicate, but it's a whole nother thing to effectively communicate. And not just listen to respond, but listen for understanding. Because the goal should be the child and not our personal feelings towards the teacher. That's my thing.
All right. So Amanda Gorman, our wonderful young person, I have a quote. We all remember this one. For there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. So my question for you, the change agents, the servant leaders, the advocates in this room, not just on the panel, but in this room and online, what will you do? What will you do to be the light in the lives of our youth? So let's pull out the phones again. And this is the final question on the Mentimeter. What will I do or will I continue to do to be the positive presence in the life of youth around me? What will I do or continue to do to be the positive presence in the life of youth around me? I'm not seeing our words come up. Okay, so,
Let us in the chat.
There we go.
There we go.
Now it's open.
oh, perfect. So you see the words that are largest and in the center are the ones that we're seeing a lot. So listen, advocate, talk to kids. I will continue to give. I will continue to listen, empower, patience, collaborate, engage, wait, be vulnerable, see light, listen and speak. I will continue to see, research, encourage, present, don't judge, organize. All right, so we'll let those words keep coming up, and Victoria will come up here, but let's give a hand to our panelists.
On behalf of the Health Promotion Resource Center and the statewide network. Thank you. And I want to thank you when I emailed you all, when I called some of you. Monaleto was talking about learning how to say no. I'm glad you didn't say no. And I was saying panel discussion, panel discussion. This was not a panel discussion. This was a community conversation. You know, when I came up here, I should have just talked off the rip. You know, I tried to use a piece of paper when I came up here. I should have just came up here and talked like this in the beginning. And then I have COVID brain. But just thank you. You know, the work that the Health Promotion Center does, it's centered around the community and the work that all of you do. And just now seeing the direction that everything is going in, when I was thinking about this and we were talking about it, I'm like, who can we put together to have this conversation and make it make sense, to continue the conversation, to highlight the work that this grant is doing. This grant was written actually before I got to the Health Promotion Resource Center. And then someone said pivot, and we hear the word innovation. And that's the work that we're doing, and you listen to the community and see what the community needs. And that's the work that you all are doing. And that's the work that we're hoping to do. And this conversation, we say continue the conversation. We said it after the symposium last year. We said it after the HPRC colloquium. And I see it up here on the screen. So we hope that after we have these events, that you all continue the conversation. You all don't need us to continue to talk and do the work, but we hope that you use it as a platform to continue to do that. So continue to network, no matter how big or small the work. You can use social media and each other. So please continue to do that. And somebody said something about food for thought. Guess what? Food is here. We can eat. Y'all have a good night. See y'all tomorrow.
Isn't that funny? I love
Victoria.
that.
Victoria, can we get a group picture?
Yeah, we can take a picture. Oh, yeah, we gotta get this in there.